Well, I don't want to give the impression that all I do is complain about representation when it's done badly, so what do I like? Okay, folks, so it is time for LGBTQ plus representation video. I'm so pompous now. I make films. No, I don't. So while I change out and remind everybody that the reason I talk about these kinds of things, aside from the fact that they should just be talked about, I am part of the LGBTQ plus community. I'm gender fluid, which usually puts me either in the Q under queer or T under trans, depending on how you view the existence of somebody like me. I don't get really hung up about it. I'm part of this community. I'm safe. I feel confident in saying that. So my original plan this month was to do a rather long in work video on bisexual representation and erasure. Unfortunately, I have somebody who I really want to have on for that, and I haven't been able to get the scheduling worked out yet. So that's going to happen at a later month. I don't know when yet. It will definitely happen, but just not quite yet. So for now, I think I wanted to just do my own sort of personal top 10 of films that heavily focus on or are primarily about LGBTQ plus characters and stories. And this was actually harder for me to put together than you might think, because I'm not a great person to get recommendations from for LGBTQ plus entertainment, because a lot of it, when it's truly about that, as opposed to just a side character happens to be LGBTQ plus, it's usually in a story that either fits into real life, realistic style drama or romance, and I don't naturally gravitate towards either one. I can enjoy drama films, I can enjoy romantic films, but that's not my genre wheelhouse. That's not where I naturally kind of want to spend my time. So there's whole swaths of quote-unquote queer films that I haven't seen and don't really want to either. But this is my list of 10 that I do like. So there were some that were in contention that I'll mention briefly that I decided to not include because there are enough sort of kind of problematic elements to them. That's things like In and Out, Rent, The Birdcage. And I also made the decision to leave off the Rocky Horror Picture Show, not because it wouldn't deserve a place on this list, but because I already devoted an entire video talking about why I think that thing is so awesome. So, if you want to hear me ramble on about that, you can already see that somewhere else. So, that said, let's get into it. We will start with number 10, But I'm a Cheerleader. So this one, it took me a little while to sort of get fully on board with, because on the surface, it has some of the elements that kind of put some of the other ones that I mentioned earlier off the list, kind of like, that's a bit stereotypical, that's a bit cliche. But the thing is, it's not just that it's a comedy, it's very much a heightened and hyper-real comedy. It is presenting a reality that is made very clear and is stylized in such a way that you would not mistake this for the reality in which we exist. So heightening it just that much, at least for me, makes the slightly stereotypical elements a little bit easier to swallow. If you've never heard of this film, it stars Natasha Lyonne as a young girl, a high schooler, a cheerleader, which is the stereotypical ideal young teenage girl who has been sent to what is basically a gay rehabilitation camp because her friends believe she's a lesbian, even though she herself claims very vehemently that she is not. And then so it becomes both simultaneously a parody of the way society views and tries to cure gay people, as well as a story about her own self-discovery. And despite, as I said, some humor, because it's from the late 90s, so some of the humor hasn't aged great, but I still think Its Heart is absolutely in the right place, and I think it holds together better than a lot of 90s comedies. So I do quite enjoy that. Number 9, Heavenly Creatures. So this is, I feel like in many ways, kind of the forgotten Peter Jackson film, because it kind of bridged the gap between the two phases of his career. It's not quite as insane as his early work, like Brain Dead or Dead Alive, depending on where you live, or Meet the Feebles, or Bad Taste. But it also hasn't gone in like to the epic grand sweep of things like Lord of the Rings or his version of King Kong. And it's kind of the transitional film between those two. But it's really good. And fascinatingly, it is based off a true story that actually happened. So, and bonus, it's also Kate Winslet's like big breakout role, but, you know, prior to Titanic. So it's about two young women who, it's a period piece. I forget when it's set. But it's two young women who meet each other, become infatuated together, and in the way that they kind of, for lack of a better term, heighten each other's feelings and perceptions and experience, and sort of the way they perceive the world gets a little weird, and they end up doing something really horrible. And it is kind of sweet, and then gradually becomes something a little bit more sinister. It is surreal at points. It is beautiful. It's well acted. It's a hard film to try and describe, but if you've never seen it, it's worth seeking out. It's one of those films that I can't promise you'll enjoy, but you'll remember it. Number 8, Camp. This is the one on the list that probably has the most tenuous claim on being an LGBTQ plus movie, because it's not really about that sort of life or experience. It has an ensemble cast, and it has a lot of LGBTQ plus characters, but it's hard to say that it is strictly speaking about that. But what it is it is set at a theater camp for sort of high school age, basically theater nerds, you know, to do plays and sing and do all that kind of stuff. And as a result, there are a lot of gay male characters. There is a character who seems to be in the early sort of discovery points of coming to terms of himself as trans. There's a character who maybe is kind of questioning, although later it's like, is this person just like a people pleaser and possibly a narcissist? So is that genuine? We don't know. Which like sounds super problematic, but like I kind of related to what was going on there. So like I feel like it did something right. And these characters are, you know, there's never a ton of like drama around the fact that these characters are gay. The counselors know, their teachers, their directors, they know. So they just kind of get to be there, but not quite in that happens to be gay way. It doesn't at times feel like a celebration of that side of them. So, and like, it's a movie I was always going to enjoy because, yeah, I was a theater kid. So I can watch it and go, yeah, I remember people like you and directors like that, and, you know, teachers who are like this counselor and things like that. So it just connects to me really well. And yeah, it's got a lot of, for lack of a better term, gay stuff going on in it. There's show tunes and drag queens and it's just sweet. I just like it. Number 7, Milk. Now, for me, I have mixed feelings about Sean Penn. And if you're like me, that may be something that makes you a little bit, I don't know about this. And if that is hard for you, like, I maybe seek out one of the documentaries about Harvey Milk, because there's some very good ones of those as well. But I do think Sean Penn's performance as Harvey Milk is really fantastic, and he does great work capturing, you know, sort of the essence of the man as much as I have come to understand what it was, because he has that sort of quiet, unassuming strength to him. He doesn't come across as strong because he's intimidating. He comes across as strong because of in some ways, the power of his empathy. Even his anger comes from a place of empathy and wanting to lift people up. And it's it's a remarkable man and life and story that, and I'm like super picky on biopics. I rarely like feel more than, yeah, that was fine with them. So yeah, I quite enjoyed this. Number 6, well, you know, it had to be on here somewhere. Brokeback Mountain. And what I like about this story, and what I liked about it at the time, and what I still like about it, is structurally, it doesn't feel substantively different from how you would tell us a straight relationship in terms of the way these people behave and the way that they are shot and the way that the story is structured. And when I say that, some people, if you haven't already seen the movie, which I think most people have at this point, but like, that might make some people nervous. So I'm like, so it's not like a proper, you know, gay male love story if it could have just been straight people and it wouldn't change. But that's not quite what I mean. Like the story is impacted by the fact that they're gay, but just the film is never trying to be a gay film. It is simply trying to be a love story between two people. And in terms of presentation, feel, style, camera work, pacing, all of that, that would have been the same even with a straight couple. But narratively, it does also integrate, you know, the reality of two men falling in love very well. And the performances are amazing. And I'm sorry, there is... I don't get hot under the collar for a lot of make-out sessions in film. It doesn't happen often, but Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal, like, wanting to tear each other's clothes off. You could see it in their face when they, like, sort of duck in between these two buildings in this alley for a hot second. It's like, whew, okay. And it's just a good movie. Number 5. Another movie that most people probably expected to be on this list somewhere. Boys Don't Cry. This one's kind of fascinating for me because I think it was 99 this came out, and it still holds up amazingly well. A lot of stuff from that time frame, especially, you know, issue movies, don't hold up especially well, but this really does. Hilary Swank's performance is absolutely phenomenal. She captures this cockiness to this young, I'm gonna say young man. You know, he didn't live long enough to properly transition, but I'm still gonna call him a young man. And she gets the swagger. She gets that feeling that comes with youth of, yeah, maybe this is risky, but I'm young and I can take on the world. Which, of course, makes the story ultimately all the more tragic. And jarringly so at times. If you don't... I mean, I suppose spoilers, but like, again, I feel like this movie is really well known, even if you haven't seen it. Besides, isn't it like a meme at this point that Hilary Swank dies in a lot of movies? She's not quite at Sean Bean's level, but I feel like she's up there. And, you know, I think that the harsh turn that it takes is jarring in a way that is effective. It doesn't feel like a massive tonal gear shift that brings the thing to a halt. It just feels like, oh God, that's how quickly everything can go wrong. Oh God. And it's powerful. Next up, number 4, Carol. This one I saw relatively recently, and I saw it with my partner Liz, and that was a really good way to see it. I mean, yeah, I'll just say it. I have a bit of a crush on Cate Blanchett. Yeah, I'll just cop to that. And the dynamic and the building of the relationship between these two women at a time when this sort of thing was I mean, frowned upon doesn't do it justice. It was illegal. Like, actively prosecuted illegal in most places. And it was genuinely dangerous for these two women to fall in love, and yet they do. But they fell in love during a time and in a world that wasn't going to let that happen. And there's something about that, because you really do get the sense that had the world not encroached, there was really something here between these two. And the chemistry between them is phenomenal. It is sweetly paced, very gorgeously shot. And it has almost kind of an ethereal quality at times that I really greatly appreciate. And I expected when I first saw it that I was going to like this movie. I didn't know I was going to like it as much as I did. And I like it a lot. All right, so we're getting up into the top 3. And pretty much everything up to this point has fallen more or less into the standard drama, romance movies. Like, all the films I mentioned up to this point were movies that basically somebody had to talk me into watching. They weren't things that I naturally gravitated towards. These last 3 were movies that, like, I actively sought out. I'm like, I want to see that. So, the first of these 3, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. So, not only do we get a genuinely great film about a genuinely fascinating group of people, but we get an amazing relationship between 2 women, and what is probably the most functional polyamorous relationship that you'll find on film so far. That's anything more than in passing. It's nice. So, if you hadn't heard of this one, it's about the guy who created the character of Wonder Woman, and his wife, and their shared girlfriend. And it's about them meeting. It's about the relationship developing. It's about the fascination that he has with both of them. It is about the development of the feelings these 2 women have for each other. It is about an exploration of kink and of bondage and of submission and domination and of loving different people in different ways, but equally as strongly. It's a really great movie. If you haven't seen it, it's yeah. I don't know what else to say. I was super excited when I heard it was being made, and I was not disappointed when I saw it. Next one, these last 2, I kept going back and forth on these. What was going to take the top spot? Because it really could have gone either way. But first up, number 2, The Handmaiden. No, not The Handmaid's Tale. This isn't the Hulu series. This is a Korean film from the director behind Old Boy and Lady Vengeance and Thirst. This is a retelling of an existing story. Fingersmith? I can't remember what the original one's called, but it's an elaborate con movie where a man has a female partner that he is sending in to get close to a wealthy woman so that they can try and find a way to bilk her out of her money. And the reason this movie is to make the list is the connection between those 2 women that is forged. And, you know, that there's very clearly very intense emotions there, but are they mutual? Do they both feel them? Does only one of them feel them? Is one of them playing the other? Are these emotions going to override what the con was supposed to be? And all these sorts of things going on, and it is so good. It is very adult. And as you would expect if you know any of the work of this director, very weird at times, but it is fascinating. And it is so engaged. It is riveting. That is what this film is. It is riveting from start to finish. And it is, even if you know like the source material, the way that it works its way through this story and presents some of this stuff, you've not seen other things like this. So I don't want to say anything more about it, because to spoil this thing would be a crime. So, yeah, I'll move on from that one to my number one spot. And this is one that I had been meaning to see for a long time. And again, I got to see this one with my partner, Liz. And it has what honestly may be the single sexiest portrayal of a character I've ever seen in a movie, ever. The film is Bound. The character is, of all things, named Corky and is played by Gina Gershon. And as far as I'm concerned, Gina Gershon takes the mantle of smoldering, rebellious sex from James Dean in this film. Just standing there, just turning to look at Violet, who's played by Jennifer Tilly, and the contrast between them, because one of them is very femme, one of them is very butch, but the connection between them, the intensity of it, there is a sex scene in this thing, holy crap, and this is a neo-noir, effectively, but the way in which it shot, this was made by the Wachowskis. This was the movie they made before The Matrix. And it is shot gorgeously. It's ambitiously handled. It deals with awesome noir tropes. It plays with gender. It plays with expectations. It plays with the machismo and all of that. And it's just so hot. Like so many movies that try to be sexy end up just being exploitative. I just sat there watching this and going, I don't feel dirty for feeling turned on by this. And that is the mark of something that is sexy without being exploitative. If you have not seen Bound, and you're up for a very R-rated movie, go see Bound. Whew. Yeah, that's my favorite at present LGBTQ plus themed movie. What are some of your favorites? Because honestly, I could use some more suggestions. Like I said, I need, and honestly, it's kind of at this point easier to find in TV. But if you've got film suggestions, because the amount of time I have, it's hard for me to get into new shows these days. But whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. A whole bunch of stuff to do. Buttons, links. The Patreon's down there if you want to support what I do and all of that. There's other links down there besides, including the book I wrote about my own experience as a gender fluid person. I'll put a link to my other channel, Vera Wild, down there. And there'll be other links besides to check out merch and all this stuff. Go give it a look or don't. You don't have to if you don't want to, because at the end of the day, you are the council. I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council is adjourned.